Welcome to South Africa on 99.94, the home of cricket audio. I'm Neil Manthorpe and my co-host is Lungani Zama. Thanks for joining Cricket's Conversation today. We're talking about, inevitably, South Africa's defeat at Old Trafford, and we're looking forward to the decider at the Oval. Well, Zams, we're on different continents, different sides of the world. I was at Old Trafford in Manchester, and I did have a drink on your behalf, and I visited some of your old stamping grounds. But you're back home in South Africa. Extraordinary back-to-back innings defeats and victories, wasn't it? I mean, South Africa innings and 12 runs at Lords, and I mean, clearly, I am difficulty speaking at the moment. I've got so much egg on my face after my predictions in our last podcast when I said that South Africa could go on and win 3-0. I didn't see Marco Jansen being dropped. I thought he was... every player that I've spoken to says continually that he has the mysterious X factor. And, I interviewed Keshav Maharaj before the Old Trafford Test match, and he said... hopefully he can go on and be our new Callis. He's comparing the kid to Jacques Callis. And then they leave him out. And they lose by an innings and 85 runs. I don't know what to make of it all. You?
Manners, I did worry about the mockers. But, hindsight is a very exact science. I actually watched that partly from the sand dunes of Namibia, where we were shooting a cricket documentary on the Namibian Eagles. So I had a lot of opinions about leaving out Marco Jansen and his X factor, and pretty interesting, but surprising, I think, is the biggest word. The fact that they started with that team after such a great performance. And like you say, somebody who gives such a different perspective to the attack, such a different weapon. And that's the guy you pick out. We pondered that it might be Lungi who misses out, or anyone else. Not your 140 k's an hour left armour who bounces awkwardly and has a bit of mongrel about him. But cricket's a funny game.
But they picked an off spinner, Sams, and which is fair enough. We expected Simon Harmer to play from weeks before because Old Trafford spins. But off spinner, left arm seamer over the wicket. I mean, that they go together like gin and tonic.
Is that what you drank at Deansgate, gin and tonic?
No, I had a pint of IPA for you.
Okay, I wouldn't delve down into pale ales, but anyway, I wasn't there, so. But yeah, Marco, I'm sure, was very disappointed, and I'm sure England were quite relieved. He makes life awkward. At the very least, he doesn't give his wicket away cheaply. He's, I suppose, if you call it, he's got the right attitude. He's the kind of guy you want to take into a fight. Not to say that Simon Harmer isn't, because obviously he's done fantastically for Essex and for every team that he's played for. So he's a match winner in his own right. But when you've just won a match so convincingly with what you have, you would have thought they would have considered long and hard to not change it, just for that match. Even if everything said Old Trafford is going to spin square on day 3 until day 5, we barely got to day 3 as it was. And it's just given England such momentum. It's 1-1. Both teams are lost by an innings, but it feels like South Africa are so much more on the back foot now because England have had their response. Now South Africa have got to respond. And Lords suddenly seems a very long time ago, which is crazy because it was just the other day.
So there's two things that trouble me. The one in talking about the decision. Look, first of all, I want to repeat what Dean Elgar said after the Test match, is that before the Test match, none of the 4 deserved to be left out of the pace quartet. None of them. But when he came to explain after the Test match why the decision had been made to leave Marco Jansen out, and just purely based on what the 4 of them achieved and how much they contributed at Lords, then, as we said a week ago, Lungi Ngidi was the likeliest to make way. and the guy's got 50 wickets at 50 Test wickets at 21. So it's like there's no question about anybody's quality. It's just that Janssen happens to be 6'8", bowls with the left hand and bats. But so when Dean came to explain it, he said, "Oh well, it was difficult, etc. But Marco's the least experienced." And it just seemed like such an old school South African attitude. It's we always work on seniority, and he's the youngest. It's like that old cricketing tradition of putting the youngest guy in at short leg, and it. And secondly, and this irritates me even more, is that he said Lungi offers us that element of control that you need in a Test match. So I don't think I'm extrapolating too much to say that by definition, what he's saying about the other three fast bowlers is that they can't offer him that element of control. He said Enrique Nokia is out and out pace, and Kagiso Rabada is the complete package. Well, if he was the complete package, then he would know how to apply the handbrake. Lungi does offer that element of control, but are we saying that the others can't?
Yeah, it's a lousy excuse. And like you say, the youngster is the one who's got to understand the difficult decisions because supposedly he's got time on his hands, even though South Africa are not going to play much Test cricket over the next 4 years in his golden years. But, I mean, we said Lungi bowled well and gave the control because he could see everyone else was firing. But we've seen Rabada change gears and go down to mid-80s when he realizes there's nothing in the pitch, but he's just got to bowl 7 tight overs because Nokia on the other end or Kesh is turning it square. These are wonderful world-class cricketers. They're adaptable. So to say that only Lungi can control is ridiculous. Kesh has done the job for years. He's been a stopper. We've employed spinners in South Africa as stoppers for 3 decades, since readmission. So to say that Lungi is the only plug it's a cop-out. And then obviously it's easy to say after the fact, but you always felt that Marco Jansen had to play because of just the variety that he brings. And he's never had a bad game for South Africa yet. And when you take that out, I'm sure England looked at that team and said, oh, that's nice of them. And then they said, we'll also give you the chance to bowl in overcast morning conditions. James Anderson coming in from the James Anderson end that he knows so well. And they thought, oh, thank you very much. This is wonderful. Christmas has come early, so it's unfortunate and it's a setback. And obviously there's now injuries to Rassie. It's become a bit of a domino effect, and South Africa have to go back and regroup. And the decision they make now, there's probably more pressure on what selection you make now, because do you still keep the youngster since he's not gained any more experience in the past week? Do you leave him out again for inexperience, or do you kind of concede that maybe we got that wrong and we'll now look elsewhere and find another reason?
I think you play him. I just think you absolutely have to play him. It's at the Oval. It's going to be pretty flat. It's most likely to go 5 days at the Oval. What about the batting? Aidan Markram has scored 36 runs in the first 2 Test matches, and I think that's they've all been largely unconvincing. Rassie Vanadasan has obviously gone back home now with a broken finger. I just, again, Aidan Markram was selected because of his experience. Did you know the remarkable stat that he has taken more innings between his first 1,000 runs in Test cricket and his second 1,000 runs than anybody else in the history of the game, by 10, by 10 innings. It's like his first 1,000 runs came in 18 innings. His second 1,000 runs came in 45 innings. So he's not just suffering a wee patch of bad form now, is he?
No. It's not form anymore. It's grounds to be dropped, if we're being frank. And there are others who've been knocking, and there are others who've been patient. And if you're using the adage that you're only as good as your last knock, it's been a long time since he had a really good knock when it mattered for South Africa. And I think if you're going out to unplayable deliveries, half of those 36 innings or 45 innings that you mentioned, sure. But some of the shots that he's played to get out, even this last test match now, there's a level of responsibility and restraint that you've got to show when you're in a bad patch, and you've got to respect the situation and make, ugly runs. The greatest players in the world have stopped certain shots in order to lessen the risk. The Tendulkar wouldn't drive. Steve Waugh, they'd restrict themselves from shots they know they can play better than 99% of the world, but because they've gone out to them a bit too many times, you just show the necessary restraint and say you'll score elsewhere. And at the moment, it looks as if Aiden Markram is saying, I'm going to bat myself out of the situation, and he's only digging the hole deeper and deeper. He's still playing too many shots. He went down the order because he played too many shots for an opener, they said, but he's still playing too many shots now. And there comes a time when you've got to, also look after your player and say, maybe take a step back and, rediscover the feet and the touch and the form and the hunger. Because if you keep failing and you keep getting picked, it creates a dangerous economy, because you just assume you're too good to be dropped, and that's if that's just spreading around the change room, then why do some people get dropped and others just don't, because they make the best looking 20s in the world. Your job as a batsman is to make hundreds, or to make telling contributions that take matches like Manchester into day 4, day 5, and save your team from a parlour situation. And too many of South Africa's batsmen are not doing it often enough. So if the bowlers don't win your matches, you got to look back a long time to think when batsmen were winning South Africa matches with big double hundreds and big hundreds and grinding opposition away. And that's a big concern. And number 4 in your batting test lineup is crucial. And if it's such a big question mark, you do have to start looking elsewhere.
Okay, so I've got Janssen back, and I've got in my starting 11 for the Oval, Ryan Rickleton and Kaya Zondo. I'm leaving Aiden Markram out. Kaya Zondo made an excellent 83 against the England Lions in the only warm-up game in Canterbury. He, you weren't there, but they were batting on the 4th day to save the game, and they're four down at lunch. Zondo's there, 8 not out. He's out reverse sweeping his first ball after lunch against the spinner, and I have to. It was a very funny moment. I mean, even he sort of looked suitably sheepish as he walked off, and a couple of the players in the dugout area were chuckling, couldn't help themselves. They were trying to suppress their laughter, But I just think that. You have to be fearless, and you have to back your players. And again, one of the frustrations for me is when Dean Elgar talks about experience. Again, by extrapolation, you're saying I don't trust the youngsters. I want experience. I want experience. Well, Kaya Zondo's 31, isn't he? I mean, he's not a youngster.
Yeah, he's waited. Goodness knows he's waited a long time, and he's been making runs at the Dolphins in that time. He wouldn't be in the test squad if he hadn't been. And that knock against the Lions, I spoke to him afterwards, and he said he felt good, he felt ready, he would love a test cap.
Oh, he's got one. He just didn't play any cricket for it. It was a COVID replacement.
Yeah, exactly. He'd love a test cap in England. He feels, he's batting well enough, and that England Lions game proved that to him as well, that he is ready. So I mean, you can't say you've got a shortage of runs and you've got a guy who's making runs and has made runs in South Africa and has waited for 10 years, and you still keep overlooking him. It just, again, it goes back to that lack of trust, that you got to look at yourself and go, well, if the guy ahead of me is not making runs at all, and I've not been picked, I've not even been considered, I've not even been mentioned, what more do I have to do? Because I can't play because I'm sitting on the bench here. I can't be playing anywhere else. What more can I do? So selectors definitely have a long week ahead to get the team right, and pick on form, and like you say, pick bravely, because it's going to take brave cricket to keep with this England team who've now got another gust of self-belief on the back of Manchester. Because if they'd had a tough day 1, you can probably imagine them going further and further into their shells and thinking that maybe they were premature and thinking that this is the new way. But the way they blew South Africa away, Lords was just a blip. And they can carry on their merry way in their minds.
Interesting you mentioned going into your shells. You and I have both been on tours with the Proteas when they've been under pressure on tour, and they've become a little withdrawn and uncommunicative, and it's the management as much as the players themselves, sometimes more the management. And I am slightly concerned about the atmosphere around the team at the moment. They have this unprecedented break, Sams. You know, I'm old enough to have been on tours in like the early '90s when there were 10 days between international matches, but then there'd be 2 warm-up games. You know, I mean, I came on the '94 tour of England, and there were 14 non-international games for a 3-test series, but you know, because they lost in 3 days at Manchester, there's 11 days scheduled between, there were 9 days scheduled between the second and third test match. And they haven't got any fixtures organised, which is fair enough, some time away from the game. But, you know, so I asked Dean Elgar in the press conference, so what are you going to actually do? You've got 11 days before the next test match. I said, yeah, maybe, maybe catch a club game at the weekend. And he treated the question as if it was facetious and sarcastic, which I didn't mean it to be at all. I mean, Saro Ovea's been playing club cricket before the tour, and to me it was a legitimate question. You know, maybe 1 or 2 of the guys offer their services to a club first 11. I think, you know, why not? Anyway. We asked the team management what they were going to be doing for the next 9 days, and there was a very perfunctory statement saying the squad will remain together and spend some time in the West Midlands. Not like we're going to play some golf or we're going to a leisure, you know, golf and spa resort, or we're, you know, not just we're going to be spending some time in the West Midlands. And it's just a lack of communication. And it's just slightly concerning to me. I mean, I think it would have been much healthier if they'd said, we're actually all going to disperse. We're going to go our own ways for 5 days. Some of the guys are going to Scotland. The guys who like fishing are going to go fishing. And, you know, like we're going to off and go and do our own thing. And then we're all going to get together and reconvene. I could be wrong, and naturally I hope I'm wrong. But I don't think that sounds very healthy. I mean, you know, I really do hope that the restaurants and the golf and their own company are all as good as each other, because they're going to need them to be.
Yeah, it's not ideal. I mean, you've just lost a test where you're looking at each other and expecting a lot more from each other. I remember 2019 World Cup when South Africa had already been knocked out, and there was a similar length break between the Sri Lanka game in Durham and the final group match, which was our final game of the World Cup against Australia in Manchester. And again, very similar. You're not going to sit and play or practice for 12 days. There was a sort of 5-day break, and some planned to go to Ireland, some were going to different parts of Europe. You know, short break, time away. It was planned beforehand. Yes, results haven't gone the way, but what's planned is planned. It's time away from each other because we've been together for a month and a half, maybe even longer. We need time apart so that when we see each other again for the last game, we look forward to working together again. But I mean, if you're just going to be stuck in a hotel, not even playing cricket, just sort of passing each other at breakfast and seeing who wants to play golf every other day, it's not healthy. You know, you're in a wonderful part of the world where you can actually get into a rental car and be in a different part of the country, different part of culture, different accents, different leagues. You know, you could easily play a couple of club matches. I'm sure there are South Africans who are just as concerned about the South African Test team who would give up their place as overseas pros or amateurs for one game to be replaced by whoever who needs the time in the middle, especially the batsmen. Maybe the bowlers need a break, but definitely those batsmen need time in the middle and just play time. You know, find their feet again. So it is crazy. You've got the option. It's the home of cricket. You could play anywhere.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'm going to change tack now. By the way, do you know I've been away from home now for 3 months? So all the biltong I brought has run out, and I'm missing the comforts of home. But I wanted to ask you about the new T20 competition. You thought I was going to ask you to post me some biltong there, didn't you? But no, it's okay. I'll get by. You can buy it now from South African shops, as you know. Never quite the same. But the new T20 competition, Sams. How's it going down? I mean, how's it being accepted? And first of all, can you name all the teams? In fact, have they been named? We've got the Paarl Royals, the
Durban Supergiants.
Durban Supergiants. Okay, what's the Chennai team called at the Wanderers? No, okay, we don't know that one. The Chennai Wanderers.
There's Cape Town Indians, I think.
Oh yes, no. That's right. My Cape Town. Yeah, that's how it's pronounced.
My
Cape Town. Okay. What's the
Josie Capitals, maybe.
Okay.
Maybe someone's a capital.
And the Sunrisers PE, Port Elizabeth Sunrisers. Is that where they are?
Well, there should really be Sunrisers Gqeberha, but I don't know if that rolls off the tongue quite as easily. But yeah.
Well, it rolls off your tongue, nicely enough. Gqeberha.
Close.
It's the effort that counts. You know that. You know, nothing more frustrating than a white person who doesn't try to pronounce Gqeberha. Much rather try and get close than not try at all. Okay, how is it? Tell me seriously. How do you think it is? It going to be a mini IPL, basically, in effect? I mean, is the marketing, the promotion, the management, is all of that being left to the teams themselves and therefore the IPL owners?
Yeah, it feels that way. It looks that way. So you assume it's going to play out that way. And you asked how it's been received. I think on the back of two false dawns in terms of the Global League and to a lesser extent the Mzansi Super League, which were supposedly the new dawns that were going to save South African cricket, and then one never made it onto the park, and then one kind of disappeared and never saw it again. It's cautious optimism, I think. There's the fact that SuperSport is a partner is soothing to those who don't believe anything that comes out of Cricket South Africa based on recent past. But the fact that you've got a broadcaster like SuperSport saying that they are behind it helps a lot. The fact that so many Indian Premier League owners are buying the franchises definitely helps. So I think people are starting to look at it and say, okay, well, this does sound like this one will happen. Yes, it's probably 5, 6, 7 years too late, but it is happening. And its biggest issue is that it's now coming into a very congested T20 domestic competition calendar. So you're fighting for real estate in a market that is, players have many, many options. So to make South Africa a New Year destination, you're jostling with a bit of Big Bash, you're jostling with whatever's happening in Asia at the same time. So you got to get that right. But, all the cards are in place and all the noises are being made from different teams starting to announce some players and, you've just got to trust that it's going to happen. We've been here before with T20 Global League. We had a big fancy do in London where journalists were flown in and celebrities were flown, So we've been here before, but it seems to be a lot more measured this time. And you'd like to think that if you're going to give up an Australian tour in prime season, it's for very good reason, to save the future of South African cricket.
Okay. How comfortable are you with the fact that when tournaments overlap, and 3 of them do, the International T20 in the UAE, or the UAE League, as I think most people will know it as until that name gets established, the South African as yet unnamed league, and the Big Bash. How comfortable are you that players appear to be allowed to sign up for bit parts of the league? I mean, there's there's 3 or 4 players who are going signed up for the first 10 games of the Big Bash, and then they're leaving and flying to Dubai and taking part in that league because it pays more. It's
Yeah.
I know that that's the reality, and I'm not being like a old-fashioned traditionalist. I'm just saying, from a practical point of view, how much credibility is lost by those tournaments where players are going like, yeah, okay, I'll play the first half, but then these other guys are paying more, so I'll go and play their tournament halfway through yours.
Yeah, it's far from ideal, especially in your first season. You want an uncluttered calendar, hopefully, where you've just got the best chance to sell your maiden voyage as well as possible, and hope that no one else is crowding in and throwing more money at players who have shown that they'll follow the money, and rightfully so. If you're a cricketer of a certain age and a certain skill set, there's never been a better time to be able to pick and choose your gigs around the world. It does take away a little bit from the competition, because just as you're building a brand around whoever, a Dwayne Bravo playing for Cape Town, and then a bigger pay packet has secured his for his signature for the last 2 weeks of the South African competition, and therefore everything that you've built around him and the team that's winning with him being the star, he suddenly disappears. It does take away from the competition, but I think the reality is, beggars can't be choosers. So if you've only got Dwayne Bravo for 3 weeks, I'm sure any South African franchise will take him, because when you have him, you'll use him as much as possible on and off the field.
It's really interesting, isn't it? I don't know whether you noticed this, or you read it, or maybe you didn't have time because you were in the desert dunes of Namibia. But Faf du Plessis, Andre Russell, and Dwayne Bravo were all left on the shelf at the Big Bash auction. And it's particularly embarrassing for Cricket Australia, because I think Faf du Plessis and Andre Russell were actually used by Cricket Australia in the promotion of the Big Bash, and they were platinum players, top of the range, and they were unbought because they weren't available for the whole tournament, because obviously Faf du Plessis is going to go and play in the South African one, T20 league, and asked why they weren't bought. Those franchises in the Big Bash who were prepared to speak said, because we were only wanting players who were available for the whole tournament. So good on the Aussies. There's I almost said something uncharitable then, but that's good authenticity. Good authenticity.
Yeah, they can afford to, Neil. I think if Faf says he's only available for a quarter of the South African leg, which he won't, you wouldn't think, teams would still take him, because you've got an international player that you can, stick your colours to for that period of time. The Big Bash and the IPL and even, Caribbean Premier League to an extent, they're established brands. So if people make cameo appearances, you can kind of get away with it and smooth it over and name a replacement well ahead. When you're trying to build new roots in a country that has reason to be pessimistic about the organisation of cricket, you need as much stability as possible. So you'd probably find that they spend over the odds on certain players just to make sure that they have them for the full first tournament, just to create the excitement, because it is an interesting time of the year to start a competition. It's still kind of just about school holidays, and then it's possible. The weather will certainly help. It seems better than the previous window in September, October, where you're fighting with other competitions around the world, and school year winding down and finances a bit tighter. So maybe you've got to be optimistic and hope that this one takes off, because goodness knows South African cricket needs it.
Okay, let's finish off with a return to the Oval then, and look forward to what you hope might happen. And and I'm not just talking about the result, and what you think might happen. See, I did say again before the Old Trafford Test what South Africa had done really well, There's an old cricket adage: if you can't score a lot of runs, make sure you score enough. And they've done that really, really well. They've scored enough runs. I mean, they scored 320 at Lords, and it was enough to win by an innings. And now, I suddenly can't see them. How I don't know how they're going to score enough runs, because you need to score a lot at the Oval historically.
Yeah, that's the biggest, not even question mark. I think that's the biggest fear that's going through that South African dressing room is where are we going to find the runs to match England on a flat pitch. You can see where England's runs is coming from because of the way that the likes of Ben Stokes, Ben Folkes, and what Joe Root has historically. We keep saying he can't fail all series long, which means he's probably going to fire at the Oval, which is a dangerous prospect. But, you look at that South African team and they all look promising, but they all look very brittle. Except maybe the openers when they're grinding it, but they don't look like they hurt opposition. So England can sort of live with a session of South Africa plodding to 50, 60 for 2, or 60 for 1 even, because they're not out the game. They're not being taken out the game. 2 sessions of Ben Stokes, 2 sessions of Ben Folkes, 2 sessions of Bairstow. Team's gone. And if you're not blowing teams away and you don't look, Rassie and Keegan Peterson had that session where they went through without losing a wicket. But you never saw England heads drop. In fact, they got keener and keener because for one thing, the bad balls weren't being put away because it was just stubborn resistance. But eventually that crumbles and you're still in innings, an 85-run loss because you're not advancing the game, you're not transferring pressure. And I think that's the biggest question mark now because there's so much lack of form in that team, in that top 6. If you're feeling good, you're feeling good about your defense, not your attack. You're not taking the game to the opposition. You're preserving your wicket, and that on the other end, wickets are tumbling. And South Africa have lost wickets in bunches. And if you do that at the Oval, it could be another three-day test. England tails are up. Their bowling seems to now have found the right balance. And their batsmen, are playing confidently as they have all summer. Lords was a blip in their minds, and if you look at the stats, it's the only game that they kind of didn't fire. But they've come back and scored a pair of centuries at Old Trafford. South Africa haven't looked close to scoring a century, and that's a big concern because that's what wins you Test matches historically.
Okay, mate, we'll talk again at the end of the week, before the Oval Test match. 20 years ago, I'd have been inclined to head off to the West Midlands and find out where the Proteas are staying. But if they want to stick to themselves and enjoy their own company, then they're very welcome to it. I've got better things to be doing.
What are you doing in your 9-day break? Besides driving the car that you borrowed back south, what is Neil Manthorpe up to over the next 9 days?
Well, I've got, as always, I've got a lot of writing to do. I need to write up the tour for the SA Cricket Annual. But I am going to get off the beaten track a little bit, I think, Sams. There's a few places of interest in the West Country that I've got my eye on. Tewkesbury, Ledbury, Gloucester, Cheltenham, around there. So I'll tell you more. I don't know exactly, but let's talk again on Friday, and I'll tell you what I've been up to at the end of the week.
Well, on Friday, I will be speaking to you from Ghana, of all places.
Ghana?
Not Ghana, yeah. There's a lot going on, man.
Okay.
It's not for cricket. But I'll speak to you from Ghana, and I'll explain more when I chat to you then.
Okay, travel well.
Drive safe. We'll chat on Friday. Cheers.
Love cricket and want to hear more? Well, head over to the 99.94 app and you can hear all of our podcasts and all our commentary. We are the home of Cricket Audio Online, where we're adding new shows and covering series, and the best way to follow us is via our app or on social media at 99.94 DM.